In the beginning, before there was death, before there was sorrow, before the fall of man, there was a garden, and in that garden, creation existed in perfect harmony. Man walked with God. There was no division, no pain, no decay. And in that divine sanctuary, animals were not separate or incidental. They were present, intentionally fashioned, divinely placed. They were part of the original design, the sacred order of Eden. The book of Genesis tells us that God formed every beast of the field and every bird of the air out of the ground, and he brought them to the man to see what he would call them, and whatever Adam called each living creature, that was its name. This is more than an act of identification. It is an act of discernment. In the Hebrew mind, to name is to recognize essence. Adam was not merely labeling animals, he was perceiving the nature of each one. This sacred task reveals the closeness between man and animal in God's design. They were both recipients of his breath, both brought into being by the same Creator, both placed in the same paradise. In that world, there was no predator and no prey. There was no fear between lion and lamb, no fleeing from danger, no survival of the fittest. There was order, there was peace. The lion did not devour, the serpent did not strike, the eagle did not hunt. All lived as part of the divine rhythm. This was not a world of instinct driven by threat and hunger, but of communion, a world where creation reflected the harmony of heaven. And man, formed from the dust, breathed into by God, stood not as a master to dominate, but as a steward to tend and to keep. The animals were not his inferiors to exploit. They were companions, fellow creatures within a divine garden. The relationship between man and animal was not fractured. There was no violence between them. There was trust. There was nearness. The same God who created man created the creatures of the field, and he saw that it was good. This is critical to understand. Animals were not introduced after the fall. They were not a byproduct of sin. They were not formed in a broken world. They were present in Eden. They walked with man before the curse entered in. Their presence in the garden speaks of their place in God's perfect plan. They were not intrusions. They were blessings, and their role in that holy place was ordained before sin distorted creation. The lion and the lamb lay together then, not because of some future prophecy, but because that was how it was meant to be. The dove flew freely without fear. The ox worked beside man in harmony. There was unity. Eden was not merely a place of beauty. It was a template of God's intention, and in that intention, animals were part of the picture. They were not background decoration, but sacred participants in the world that was. So when we ask what happens to pets when they die, we must first return to Eden. We must remember that these creatures who walk with us in our joys and griefs were once part of a world untouched by death. They were created not in a fallen world, but in a perfect one. They were present before the separation began, before man turned away, before the curse descended, and their place in Eden tells us something vital. They matter to the Creator. You said, ChatGPT said, in the Hebrew scriptures, the word used for soul is nephesh. This word does not belong exclusively to humankind. It is the same word used in reference to animals throughout the early chapters of Genesis. In Genesis 1:20, when God says, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life," the word for life is nephesh. And again in Genesis 1:24, when the earth is commanded to bring forth the living creature, it is nephesh chea, living soul. This same phrase, nephesh chea, is used in Genesis 2:7, when man becomes a living soul after receiving the breath of God. This is not to suggest that animals are made in the image of God as man is, nor that they possess moral consciousness or the capacity to sin or be redeemed. The distinction is clear. Man alone is made in the Tes Elam Elohim, the image of God. But what it does affirm is that animals are more than biological machines. They are not void of being. They are not soulless. They possess breath. They possess life. They possess nephesh, soul in the sense of living, moving, feeling existence. This distinction matters in the ancient world and especially within the Hebrew world. Soul was not something simply tied to intellect or eternal destiny. It was the animating essence of a living creature. To possess nephesh meant to be a being with movement, with sensation, with appetite, with emotion. Scripture tells us that animals feel fear, they express longing, they exhibit loyalty, they can grieve, and they can rejoice. They live not just by instinct, but by the breath God gave them. Job 12:10 declares, "In his hand is the life of every creature and the breath of all mankind." The same breath, the same sustaining power, flows through all living things. Psalm 104 speaks of God sending forth his Spirit and renewing the face of the earth, and of creatures depending on his breath for their very survival. When he withdraws his breath, they die. When he gives it, they live. There is a sacred dependence. Animals do not live apart from God. They live by him. This nephesh is not eternal in the same way as the soul of man, yet it is not insignificant. It tells us that animals are not disposable. They are not incidental. Their lives are sacred. Their deaths are noticed. If God knows when a sparrow falls, if he feeds the beasts of the field and gives drink to the wild donkeys, if he clothes the lilies and numbers the hairs on your head, then surely he cares for the creatures he formed from the dust with his own hands. The nephesh of animals is part of the mystery of creation. It means that pets, those we've named, those we've nurtured, those who have walked beside us, carry within them something breathed by God. Their lives are not mechanical. Their love is not illusion. What we feel when we lose them is not misplaced emotion. It is the aching absence of something real, something sacred, something that bore the mark of divine breath. So when the breath leaves them, when the eyes dim and the movement ceases, it is not merely biology at work. It is a soul returning to the hand that gave it. The nephesh that lived by God's Spirit now rests in his knowledge, in his memory, in the great tapestry of all living things that came forth when God spoke, "Let the earth bring forth." You said, ChatGPT said, when the flood came upon the earth in the days of Noah, it was not only a judgment upon mankind, but a reckoning upon all creation. The earth had become filled with violence. Corruption had overtaken not just man, but the earth itself. Yet in the midst of judgment, there was mercy, and that mercy was not only extended to Noah and his family, it was extended to every living creature that walked, crawled, flew, and swam. Genesis 6:19 declares, "And of every living thing of all flesh, 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee." The word used here for living thing again connects to nephesh, those with breath, those with life. God made a covenant not just with Noah, but with the animals. He commanded that they be brought into the ark, preserved from the waters of judgment. The ark becomes a symbol of salvation, not just for humanity, but for the whole created order. It is not a human invention, it is a divine design. God gave the instructions, God directed its construction, and God closed the door. Within it, human and animal shared the same vessel of grace. The animals did not earn their place. They were not righteous or wicked. They were simply loved by the one who made them. They were chosen to live, remembered by the Creator when the world forgot. Genesis 8:1 says, "And God remembered Noah and every living thing, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark." This is not a passing mention. The verse could have ended with Noah, but it didn't. God remembered every living thing. He did not forget the creatures. He did not overlook them. They were part of his plan. They were part of his mercy. They were preserved through the storm. This remembrance is not simply nostalgia. It is covenantal. When the floodwaters receded and the earth began anew, God made a covenant. In Genesis 9:10, he says, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and with your seed after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the fowl, the cattle, and every beast of the earth with you." It is repeated multiple times. The covenant is with mankind and with every living creature. God did not need to make a covenant with the animals. They had not rebelled. They had not sinned. Yet he chose to bind his promise to them. He placed the rainbow in the sky not just as a sign to man, but as a witness to all flesh. This covenant declares that the earth will not be destroyed by flood again, and it includes the creatures. Their lives mattered enough to be included in the promise of preservation. This tells us something essential about the heart of God. He is not only the Redeemer of man, he is the preserver of creation. His eye is on the sparrow. His compassion reaches to the beasts of the field. And when he acts in mercy, that mercy overflows to the innocent life that depends on him. So when an animal passes from this world, when a beloved pet is lost, we must remember the ark. We must remember that in the greatest judgment the world had known, God made room for them. He remembered them, he preserved them, they were not forgotten then, and they are not forgotten now. You said, for ChatGPT said, the prophet Isaiah in chapter 11 paints a vision of a world restored. A world not just of spiritual renewal, but of physical transformation. It is a prophecy of the Messianic kingdom, a time yet to come when peace will reign not only among nations, but among the creatures of the earth. He writes, the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. This is not poetic metaphor alone, it is a declaration of reversal, a healing of the divide. In this vision, predators and prey no longer war. The fear that once ruled the wild is no more. The instincts driven by survival are replaced by peace. The lion, once a symbol of danger and death, now lies beside the lamb, once the picture of vulnerability. The kingdom to come is not only the restoration of man, it is the redemption of the natural order. Isaiah goes further. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox. These are not symbolic creatures, they are real. Their behavior is altered, their nature is renewed. It is not just the human world that is made new, but the animal world also. The effects of the curse are undone. The division that entered in Eden, the fear, the death, the survival by blood, all of it is reversed. And then comes the most striking image. The nursing child shall play by the cobra's hole, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the viper's den. The danger that once lurked in the animal kingdom is gone. Not just suppressed, but transformed. The serpent, the symbol of the fall, is rendered harmless, and a child, the most vulnerable of all, leads and plays without fear. This is not merely a prophecy about spiritual peace. It is a foretelling of environmental and biological change. The world will return to a state where harmony exists between man and animal, where the design of Eden is restored in full. If this is the future kingdom, then the place of animals is not forgotten. They are not excluded from the restoration. They are not erased in the new heavens and new earth. They are part of it. This vision speaks deeply to the nature of redemption. Redemption is not partial. It is not isolated to the soul of man alone. It is cosmic. It reaches into every fiber of creation. The Messiah comes not only to save mankind, but to restore all things. This includes the earth. This includes the creatures. This includes the ones that walked beside us, served us, comforted us, and bore the breath of God. Isaiah's words echo Eden. They are a mirror of what once was, and a glimpse of what will be again. The animals were there in the beginning. They will be there in the end, and between those 2 points, the heart of God has not changed. His care for creation has never diminished. His promise includes the beasts of the field and the birds of the air. When we consider what happens to our pets, we must remember this vision. We must see their place in the future kingdom, not through the lens of sentiment, but through the lens of prophecy. They are part of what will be restored. They are part of what will be made new. The kingdom to come is not empty of animals, it is filled with them. You said, 5 ChatGPT said, in the book of Romans chapter 8, the Apostle Paul reveals a mystery, one that stretches far beyond the salvation of man. He writes that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. This groaning is not symbolic, it is real, it is deep, it is the cry of a fallen world waiting to be healed. And it is not just man who groans, it is creation itself. Creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own will, but because of the one who subjected it, in hope. The ground was cursed because of man. The natural order was fractured. Thorns and thistles rose where there had once been abundance. Pain entered where peace had been. Death touched not only humanity, but every living thing. The animals, innocent of the fall, were caught in its wake. They began to fear, they began to flee, they began to pray and to be preyed upon. The peace of Eden was broken, but Paul's words do not end in despair. He writes that creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the glorious freedom of the children of God. This is a promise, a revelation. The redemption brought by God is not limited to the spiritual realm. It touches the physical, it touches the earth, it touches the creatures who suffer under the weight of a broken world. This groaning of creation is the same we feel when we watch a beloved pet suffer, when we lose them to sickness, when we bury them and walk away with hearts broken. That sorrow is not imaginary. It is part of the same groaning. And the promise is this, that even creation waits in expectation. The trees, the rivers, the skies, and the animals, all of them look forward to something greater, something coming. When the sons and daughters of God are revealed, when the redemption is made manifest, then the whole world will be made new, not just heaven, but earth, not just spirits, but bodies. And in that renewal, creation will be freed from the corruption it never chose. The animals, who suffer and die though they did not rebel, will know peace again. Paul's words carry the rhythm of restoration. There is hope woven into the groaning, a coming glory that will reach the furthest edges of nature. If the rocks can cry out, if the earth can quake at the presence of God, if a donkey can speak by his will, then surely the souls of animals, those who bear his breath, are not beyond his memory. This is not human sentiment, it is biblical truth. The fall touched all, but so will the restoration. God does not redeem halfway. He does not restore in fragments. What was lost in Eden will be regained in the kingdom, and the animals, those who now suffer, those who pass from this world, will not be forgotten. Their groaning is heard. Their place in creation is not erased. We are told that the lion will lie down with the lamb, that the bear and the ox will feed together, that the wild shall be tamed, and the innocent will walk without fear. This is the end of groaning. This is the fulfillment of the promise. Creation waits, animals wait, and the day is coming when the wait will end. You said, 6 ChatGPT said, throughout Scripture, the compassion of God is not limited to humanity. It stretches further, deeper, into the realm of every living creature. From the very beginning, when he fashioned the animals and declared them good, to the final pages of prophecy where wolves and lambs lie together in peace, his concern for creation is consistent, deliberate, and holy. In Jonah 4:11, God speaks of the city of Nineveh, saying, "And should not I spare Nineveh, that great city, wherein are more than 6,000 persons, and also much cattle?" The mention of animals is not incidental. It is part of God's rationale for mercy. He is aware of the cattle. He is mindful of their existence. His compassion encompasses them. Psalm 36:6 declares, "Your righteousness is like the mighty mountains. You preserve both people and animals, O Lord." The Hebrew here doesn't draw a sharp line between man and beast. It affirms that God's preserving hand upholds both. He is not the God of man only. He is the God of life. All life, every creature that breathes does so by his will, and none are beneath his attention. Jesus spoke of sparrows, saying, "Not one falls to the ground without the Father's knowledge, not one." In the eyes of the world, a sparrow is a small thing, common, insignificant, yet the fall of a single sparrow is recorded in heaven. That is the scale of divine care. That is the nature of divine compassion. In Proverbs 12:10, it says, "A righteous man regardeth the life of his beast, but the tender mercies of the wicked are cruel." The righteousness of a man is measured in part by how he treats animals. Why? Because the heart of the righteous reflects the heart of God, and God is a God who shows mercy to all his works. Psalm 145:9 declares, "The Lord is good to all, and his tender mercies are over all his works." This includes the wild beasts of the field, the cattle in the barns, the birds in the sky, and yes, the pets who share our homes and hearts. They are not accidents of biology. They are not unnoticed. They are the works of his hands. When Jesus entered Jerusalem riding on a colt, it fulfilled prophecy, but it also showed his gentleness. He chose not a war horse, but a young, unbroken animal, and it obeyed. It carried the King of Kings. And he honored it. His presence sanctified it. He did not crush it with glory. He shared his journey with it. When we mourn the loss of a pet, we are not grieving in vain. We are responding to a bond created by God's own breath. We are mourning a creature shaped by his hands, watched by his eyes, and sustained by his love. And the one who notes the fall of the sparrow does not turn away when our hearts break over a faithful companion's final breath. His compassion reaches farther than we know. His memory holds more than we can imagine. Every creature that has walked this earth, every pet that has curled by our feet or licked our tears, has lived within the scope of his mercy. None are forgotten, none are lost from his sight. Compassion is not something he turns off. It is his nature, unchanging, eternal, and complete.